Haylo Puggies. Thank you for joining me and Rosie. Unfortunately, Charles decided that he wanted to spend time with Dad tonight, not Mum. Apparently, I'm boring. But luckily, I've got Rosie. I'm so sorry. Obviously, we're running an hour later than when we had advertised. We've had some technical difficulties again. As you can imagine, very frustrating. But the upside is we're live. Ray, Mummy. And I can see some people who are watching. So thank you very much for watching and dropping in. I really do appreciate it. It's so awesome to see you. And please introduce yourself in the comments section. Tell me your name, your pug's name, where you're from. I'd absolutely love to swap stories with you. So a little bit of admin first with the way the live stream works with Facebook. Hey, puppy. You actually need to put your name in there because the privacy requirements means that I can't see your name. So, and I'd like to be able to call you out by your name. But please don't be afraid to drop comments or photos into the comments section at any time. I'd absolutely love to see photos of your pugs because I love talking pug. And last, as a way of saying thank you for stopping by, and also to encourage you to leave a comment is that we're giving away a $20 Pug Parties gift card at the end of the live stream to a lucky Grumble member. I'm sorry, Rosie's trying to get a little bit more comfortable. And I'd hate for you to miss out. Hey? Yeah, we don't want anyone to miss out, do we, Rosie? And so the start of this live stream series, we've done this a couple of times over the last 12 months. We've had loads of fun doing it. Obviously, the technical difficulties have made me want to cry, that's for sure. But what we wanted to do was start talking about what it was like living the pug life. I don't know about you. I've been a pug mum for almost 20 years. Charles and Rosie are my third and fourth rescue pugs. And for me, I find that people don't understand living the pug life unless you are a pug parent or a pug mum or a pug dad, depending on who you are. So for me, you understand what it's like to be the Crazy Pug Lady or the Crazy Pug People. And so that was why I wanted to start this live stream to talk about what it was like. I think pugs are the best dogs out. And if I could have more, I would have. But unfortunately, at the moment, fortunately or unfortunately, I just have Charles and Rosie, but you never know what might happen in the future. As I mentioned before, I've been a pug mum for almost 20 years, two pug rescues. That wasn't always the plan, but sort of life presented me with the opportunity to give Lewis, my first pug, a safe and loving home. And my gut told me that was meant to be, and I have to admit, ever since that first time with Lewis, I've adopted rescue pugs ever since. Amazingly, I didn't grow up with pugs or pets per se. I grew up in rural Tasmania. With hunting dogs, working dogs, and therefore the dogs that I was around, they were not pets. They couldn't be treated as pets because that would ruin their training. But for someone who always wanted a dog, you can imagine what that was like at a young age, wanting to have a best friend who I could walk and play with. And so what it basically meant for me was I just had to wait until I was a lot older. And could afford the time and the money to have a pug of my own. So interestingly, it wasn't until I saw The Adventures of Milo and Otis, if you're old enough to remember when that first came out, that I knew that I wanted to be a pug mum, not just an owner of any dog, but a pug, or maybe pug slave. Depending on how you look at it, because let's face it, everybody knows what it's like being a pug parent. But for me, when I saw Otis, it was almost like love at first sight. And I'll never be able to completely understand or explain why I felt like that to anyone else except for pug owners or pug parents. But for me, I think initially it was because he was just so cute and he was loyal and brave and, just the best friend that I always wanted. Who would have thought? And so for me, Otis was the best friend that I could take on the world with. As well as give me cuddles and kisses whenever I wanted it or needed it. As you can see, Rosie's done for the day. She's decided that my arm is better used as a chin resting pose. She's now right, Pup. So even then, after realising that I was going to be a pug parent, it took me another 15 years before I got my wish and Lewis come into my life. I had joined the Navy after I graduated from college, and going to sea meant that I wasn't home for months at a time, and that really wasn't fair. So when I finally got senior enough in the Navy and then finally got a long-term shore posting, I knew that it meant that I could finally become a pug mum. And it was so awesome. I was so excited, and I'd started researching breeders, and then that was how Lewis and I crossed paths. But I'll talk more about Lewis's journey next week. But needless to say that I can unreservedly say that I've never regretted adopting him or any of my pugs since then. I can see people are popping in and out of the live stream. Please make sure that you type in the comments section your name and where you're from and your pug's name, because I'd really, really like to know. And please tell me about your pug. It's absolutely awesome. And the best thing is if you leave a comment, you go into the running to win a $20 Pug Parties gift card. So nobody can snuffle at that, especially knowing that we've got the PJ launch going on at the moment. So getting back to why I become a pug mum. So I don't have any children of my own. My pugs have always intuitively been my kids. And once my family met Lewis, I think they realised that too. Interestingly, when I first adopted Lewis, I wasn't with Andrew, so it was always me and Lewis against the world until Andrew come along, and then Andrew joined the puggy team and soon learned that being a pug parent meant being a pug slave. But interestingly, Andrew's mum used to refer to Lewis as the grand puppy, and then continued on that tradition with Winston and Charles when they came into our lives until Andrew's mum passed away. So much so that people would, I was the crazy pug lady that used to sit outside a cafe in the middle of a Melbourne winter, which we're obviously now experiencing again, admittedly in lockdown at the moment. So I know that the puppies were not impressed that they didn't get to go out to the cafe today. But back 20 years ago with Lewis, we would have to sit outside in the alfresco area and it would be freezing and we'd both be rugged up. And I'm not joking, Lewis and I had matching outfits. Not all of our outfits matched, but, a few of them did. I am more than happy to admit. And you can imagine back in the early 2000s, that was a huge novelty for people, seeing a pug dressed up. And for me to get outfits, I had to have them shipped in from over the world. And there was this very long, convoluted process. And we all know what it's like shopping for our pugs. It's a little bit hit and miss. So I got very inventive as to how I could rug up Lewis on those really cold days. But it was amazing. Like, I got loads of comments, and back then it was probably 50-50. So some people would come up and they would be like, oh my God, he's so gorgeous, which we all know pugs are. And they want to pat him and give him a treat and all that sort of stuff. And then the other 50% of people would make comments about my sanity, about better uses of my time and money and all that sort of stuff. And you know what, especially back then, Fat Dog meant so much to me. Sorry, Fat Dog is Lewis's nickname. He meant so much to me that I didn't care. And sometimes I was probably a little bit rude with people when they made rude comments to me. But he was just, the look on his face when I opened up his wardrobe, and yes, all my pugs have wardrobes, and and I got out an outfit, he knew that we were going somewhere special, and it was we. It wasn't me leading or him or anything. It was we. And he knew that he would be going out and he'd get lots of cuddles, and even if it meant sitting outside in the freezing cold, he could sit on my lap. I'd have my cup of coffee and we'd be catching up with someone. And it was an awesome outing for both of us. And it just, generally people would give him a pat or give him a cuddle or something on those lines. So I just, you know what, sometimes I think you've just got to go through those horrible times so that eventually people see that really, in the scheme of things, dressing your pug or showing your pug how much you love them doesn't really matter how you do it, whether you give them treats or you dress them up. All that matters is the little smile on their face. They're so happy when they're making other people happy. And I love the fact that now I can take Charles and Rosie to a paw-friendly cafe, and there is actually such a thing. And the comments that we get now is how adorable they are and how wonderful they look, and can we please pat them and all that sort of stuff. And they're actually welcome inside. So they're not relegated outside on really cold days. They're welcome inside, and they can have a treaty while they're sitting under the table, being a little rat bag, getting my feet caught up in their leads. That is just the great thing about being a pug mum these days that I didn't have 20 years ago with Fat Dog. Probably, I think the best thing about being a pug mum is that it's just their unconditional love. And I think it's what makes pugs unique. Like, all dogs love their owners. I don't disagree with that, but there is just something about pug love that is like next level. I've made comment before about the fact that I think Cupid is a pug in disguise, because there's no other animal in the world that spreads love and happiness the way a pug does. And they just do it inherently. Like, they're just by their little smile, their little wag of their tail, the fact that they run up to people and they want to say hi, and you can't not smile. They're just beautiful. And it's the thing that I think is the best part of being a pug parent. Conversely, probably pugs do annoying things. And at various times, my pugs have annoyed me in one way or the other. They've tripped me over, and I've had my hands full, and I've broken things and all that sort of stuff. But I think probably the one thing that is the worst part about being a pug mum is having to repeat myself constantly every day without fail. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. Like, you really do feel like a broken record sometimes. And for me, I think even though I know it's a normal dog thing, it's the ear slobbering. First, Winston used to do it with Charles because they're litter brothers and they grew up together. The thing that used to frustrate me was that Charles would get really bad ear infections. And so we just get the last infection sorted out, and Winston will be back in there slobbering in his ears all over again. And Andrew and I'd look at each other and go, oh my God, and so you'd say, no, stop doing it, all that sort of stuff, just horrendous. And the worst thing is Charles is now doing the same thing to Rosie. Luckily, she hasn't had ear infections yet. And fingers crossed it doesn't happen. But it just got to the point where I said, I need to go and do some more research, because I know it is a dog thing, but it really worries me that it causes ear infections. And I learnt this little fact, which is kind of gross. Yeah, there's just no other word for it. So apparently earwax tastes like candy to pugs. Like, just and absolutely you can say that there's something wrong with me and I'm just being a little bit overzealous and all the rest, but I shared this with another pug mum not too long ago, and she teases me about it all the time because her pugs do it too. She had a boy and a girl. And I tell you what, there's just every time I catch Charles doing it, I have to admit it's probably habit now telling him to stop doing it because I don't want Rosie to get an ear infection. But in the back of my mind, all I can think was, in his head, he's probably thinking to himself, this is the tastiest ear I've ever licked. And it's just gross. I know, it's really silly. Hey, puppy. Who would have thought? So, and probably the last thing I'll say about being a pug mum is, and I'd be remiss not to talk about it, is the third part about being a pug mum, which is the worst thing. I really had to think about it because I've been so lucky with my 4 pugs. They've all had health issues, like what pug hasn't? But similarly, the health issues aren't the worst part about being a pug parent in my mind. What I think is actually the worst part about being a pug mum is not being there at the end. And for different reasons, Andrew and I couldn't be there for Lewis and for Winston. And God knows that was probably the most horrible thing for both of us. When Lewis passed of old age, and at the time, the day that it happened, Andrew and I were moving house. Like, talk about pick your moments, fat dog. He was actually with Andrew's mum, so that, we could move house and that, he'd be safe and he wouldn't be underfoot and he wouldn't get hurt or get lost or anything else like that. But of course, it also meant that it happened with my mother-in-law, which was, and I'm so glad that he was with her because she loved him so much that I know that he knows that he was with somebody who loved him. But it still broke our heart, and it absolutely broke hers, as you can imagine. And then with Winston, we'd had 12 months of hospital visits and surgeries and medication and a whole bunch of stuff. And then we got him healthy, and then we had a wonderful 3 months with him. Christmas, and we're away, and he was feeling so good. And then in one weekend, he just crashed, and it just gutted us. And we rushed him back to hospital, not knowing what was going on. And he was in overnight. And the next morning, we were preparing for the specialist to ring us and say, right, this is the game plan. This is what we're going to do, and everything's going to be okay. And don't worry about it. Winston's a fighter. He'd literally been fighting for 12 months with us. And then the specialist rang and told us something that we talked about, but never thought that we were at that point. And that was he was in too much pain and that there was nothing more that they could do. And even worse, we had to make the decision there and then. Whether we liked it or not, we couldn't be there because it was cruel not to make the decision. And we got there as fast as we could. So we were there like minutes after everything had happened. We just couldn't let him be in pain anymore. But still, it is the worst part of being a pug parent, not being there. Needless to say that I hope that we will be there for Charles and Rosie when the time comes. Hopefully not for a long time. But the thing that I suppose we hold dear to our heart is that when we had Lewis and Winston in our lives, and same thing with Charles and Rosie, we continue to love and spoil them. Obviously, they're like any pug. They're our fur children. We give them loads of treaties. Obviously, I love to dress mine because I think they're just adorable and they deserve the attention that they get from looking adorable. And that's the thing that I can do to be the best pug mum I can be to Charles and Rosie, irrespective of what happens. And so that's pretty much my reasons for why I become a pug mum and why I'm still a pug mum even now, and I hope to be for many, many more years. And if I get to the point where I can't be a pug mum, then hopefully I can continue to donate to pug rescues so that puggies can at least find their forever home, and have the life that they deserve, which I think is one of absolute love and adoration in return. Now, I've noticed that we still have one or two people online. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really would love to know, I would love to know your name, because whoever it is that leaves a comment and leaves their name will win the $20 Pug Parties gift card, which means you can spend it on anything in the store. And you can spoil your puggy, which I think is absolutely awesome, of course. Please leave your name and your pug's name so we know who's going to be winning the gift card. And please share your stories. I really do want to know what it's like living your pug life, and how it's been. Is it your first pug, or have you had loads of pugs and your current pug is just the unique little terrier? Oh, hello, Minnie Crow's mum. Hello, it's so good to see you. Or at least see your message. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. For everybody else who's dialing in, that is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I'll Minnie Crow's mum, you're the winner. You are a very lucky lady. So and give a big kiss and cuddle to Minnie for me as well. And I'll get you your gift card soon. So next week, the next installment, we're going to be talking about Lewis, my first pug. So what it was like being a first-time pug owner for me all those years ago. And I'm sure you all want to know why we used to call him Fat Dog. So until next week, have a wonderful week. For those of you that are in Melbourne and in lockdown, please stay safe and enjoy lockdown with your pugs. I know that Rosie and Charles have loved the fact that Andrew and I are home full time, and that means extra treaties and extra cuddles and kisses. And so until next week, love your pug, give them loads of treats, and we'll see you soon. Bye. You going to say goodbye? No, she's out for the count. Bye.